e5. H takes g5. H takes g5. Rook takes f5. Rook takes f5. King takes d3. Rook takes f7. d5. Rook f6. Rook b8. g6. d4. g7. Rook g8. Rook g6. King c3. King d1. d3. Rook g2. c4. King c1. a5. a4. King b3. King d2. Rook d8. g8 promotes to queen. Rook takes g8. Rook takes g8. King takes a4. King c3. King a3. Rook c8. King a2. Rook takes c4. Black time out, white is victorious. Bishop takes f4. Bishop e6. Rook a d1. Bishop d5. Rook f2. Long castle. Rook e1. Rook hg8. Bishop g3. Queen g6. Queen h4. Queen g5. Queen d4. b6. Queen c3. h5. e6. c4. e6. Knight f3. Knight f6. g3. d5. Bishop g2. d4. Short castle. c5. b4. c takes b4. a3. Knight c6. a takes b4. Bishop takes b4. Queen a4. Short castle. d3. a5. Bishop g5. Bishop d7. Knight b d2. h6. Bishop takes f6. Queen takes f6. Rook fb1. e5. Queen b5. Rook fb8. Knight e4. Queen e7. c5. Knight a7. Queen c4. Bishop c6. Knight h4. Queen e6. Queen takes e6. F takes e6. Knight g6. Knight b5. Knight takes e5. Knight c3. Knight takes c3. D takes c3. Bishop takes c6. B takes c6. Knight takes c6. Rook b5. Knight d7. c6. B takes c6. B takes c6. Knight f8. b5. Rook h6. e5. Knight takes g6. F takes g6. Rook takes g6. e4. Bishop g5. d5. Bishop takes c1. d2. D takes e5. g3. Queen g5. h4. Queen h6. g5. Rook takes g5. H takes g5. Queen takes g5. f4. E takes f4. G takes f4. Queen takes f4. g3. Queen g4. c5. Queen d1. b6. King d8. b7. Bishop takes b7. C takes b7. Rook b8. c6. Knight e7. b4. A takes b4. C takes b4. Bishop takes b2. A takes b2. Knight c8. a5. Knight a7. a6. Queen takes b1. a4. Queen takes b2. b5. Queen takes a2. c4. Queen takes a4. f4. Queen c2. e5. Queen takes d3. e6. Queen takes c4. d6. C takes d6. e7 check. King takes e7. c7. Queen takes c7. b6. Queen takes b6. e3. Queen takes a6. h3. Rook takes b7. h4. Queen takes f1. g4. Queen f3. g5. Queen g4. d4. Queen takes h4. g6. Queen f6. d5. Queen takes g6. C takes b4. Rook takes a4. d5. Rook h8. c3. Queen d8. c6. Knight takes b6. d3. Queen takes d6. c5. Queen d8. C takes b6. Queen takes b6. f2. Queen takes b5. c4. Queen b6. c5. Queen b5. C takes b7. Bishop takes b7. d6. Queen takes d3. f4. Bishop takes e4. F takes e5. F takes e5. f4. Queen takes e3. F takes e5. Bishop takes e5. g5. Bishop takes f5. d7. Bishop takes d7. h6. Knight takes h6.
Kutsanda, subscribe to the channel.
G takes h6. Rook takes h6. g4. Rook takes h4. h3. King g7. h2. Queen d2. g3. Rook takes h3. g5. Queen takes d1. b3. Rook takes a3. b5. Bishop takes b5. b4. Queen takes b1. c6. Bishop takes c6. g4. Rook h8. h3. Queen takes b4. h4. Rook takes h4. g3. Rook takes g3. a3. Rook g takes g4. A takes b4. Rook takes g5. a3. Rook takes g6. b5. Bishop takes b5. D takes e5. D takes e5. Bishop takes f5. e4. Bishop d7. f5. f6. e6. Bishop c8. c5. Bishop takes c5. b4. Bishop takes b4. C takes b4. Queen takes b4. b3. Queen a3. G takes f6. G takes f6. g4. Queen takes c1. g5. F takes g5. H takes g5. Queen takes d1. f6. Queen takes e1. f7 check. King f8. h5. a5. e5. A takes b4. A takes b4. c6. e4. C takes b5. A takes b5. b6. d5. e6. d6. E takes f5. G takes f5. f6. h4. F takes e5. F takes e5. B takes c5. B takes c5. Rook a5. d4. h6. g6. Bishop b7. d3. Knight c6. f4. Knight takes d4. C takes d4. Queen a8. a4. Bishop takes e4. g4. Rook takes a4. B takes a4. Queen takes a4. a2. Bishop b7. d2. Queen b4. e3. Queen a5. f3. Queen a7. e2. Queen a5. f2. King d8. g3. King c8. g2. Queen a8. e4. Knight e7. f6. G takes f6. E takes f6. Knight c6. B takes c6. Bishop takes c6. e5. Bishop takes f3. G takes f3. Rook g8. f5. Queen c6. g5. H takes g5. H takes g5. King b7. d5. Black time out, white is victorious. G takes h6. Bishop takes h6. d5. Queen g4. f3. Queen d7. e3. a5. h5. a6. B takes a6. B takes a6. Knight takes a6. b5. Knight b8. d5. e6. d4. a6. b6. C takes b6. C takes b6. Queen takes b6. e5. H takes g4. H takes g4. E takes f5. G takes f5. d6. e6. g6. e4. Knight e7. E takes f7 check. King takes f7. f6. Knight g8. e5. King e8. e4. Knight d7. d3. Queen c7. e3. D takes e5. F takes e5. Knight takes e5. D takes e5. Queen takes e5. f4. Queen c7. e5. a5. a4. Bishop b7. e4. Rook h5. d4. Rook h8. f3. Rook h5. h3. Bishop d6. d3. King f8. f2. Queen b8. a3. Bishop c7. c5. Bishop c8. c4. Bishop d8. d6. Rook h7. a2. Rook h5. c3. Rook h7. c2. Bishop d7. d5. Queen c8. d4. Rook h5. e6. Bishop takes e6. D takes e6. Queen takes e6. d5. Queen d7. h2. Rook h8. g4. Rook takes h4. f5. G takes f5. G takes f5. Knight takes f6. G takes f6. Bishop takes f6. g3. Rook takes h3. b4. A takes b4. A takes b4. Rook takes a4. b3. Rook a3. b5. Bishop takes c3. f4. Bishop b4. c6. Queen takes d6. e5. Queen c7. f6. Bishop c5. e6. King e8. f7 check. King f8. g4. g5. Queen f1. b6. A takes b6. A takes b6. C takes b6. C takes b6. White resigned, black is victorious. e6. h5. a6. h4. A takes b5. A takes b5. b6. c6. d5. C takes d5. E takes d5. e3. Knight e7. E takes d5. Knight takes d5. e4. Knight e7. f6. G takes f6. G takes f6. Knight e takes c6. B takes c6. Knight takes c6. e3. b5. d5. Knight b8. c4. B takes c4. D takes c4. c6. c3. C takes d5. E takes d5. Knight d7. g5. Knight b6. e4. Queen c7. d3. Knight d7. a4. Knight takes e5. F takes e5. Queen takes e5. f4. Queen b8. a3. Bishop d7. a5. Rook a6. c2. Queen a8. f3. Rook takes a5. B takes a5. Queen takes a5. b4. Queen a4. f2. Bishop d6. e5. Bishop b8. g4. Bishop a7. f5. Short castle. f4. Rook e8. g6. Bishop b8. h3. Bishop takes e5. F takes e5. Rook takes e5. f4. Rook e1. G takes h7 check. King takes h7. c5. Rook takes d1. c6. Bishop takes c6. b3. Queen a8. D takes c6. Queen takes c6. g5. a5. h5. d5. e6. D takes e6. D takes e6. d4. Knight e7. a4. H takes g4. H takes g4. E takes f5. E takes f5. Bishop takes f5. e4. Bishop c8. d5. f6. d4. F takes g5. H takes g5. Knight g6. e5. Knight takes f4. G takes f4. Rook h4. h3. g6. e4. Queen e7. d6. C takes d6. C takes d6. Queen h7. c5. Rook takes h3. G takes h3. Queen takes h3. g2. Queen takes h1. c4. Queen takes f1. f5. Queen takes e1. d3. Queen takes f2. d5. Queen takes g2. a6. B takes a6. c6. A takes b5. A takes b5. Queen takes f3. c5. Queen takes g4. F takes g6. Queen takes g5. e6. Queen takes g6. a4. Bishop takes e6. D takes e6. Queen takes e6. c4. Bishop takes d6. C takes d6. Queen takes d6. c2. Queen takes b4. a3. Queen d6. a5. Knight takes c6. B takes c6. Queen takes c6. b4. Queen a4. c5. King d7. d4. Rook e8. e5. King c8. c3. Queen b3. White resigned, black is victorious. c6. Bishop c8. d3. h5. c3. Short castle. c2.